Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I am back with another video. Today's video features this cute little stamp set from My Favorite Things. It is called Dear Sweet Friend. That's what it's called. So before we get too far into the making of the video, if you're watching this on Wednesday when the video first goes live, this stamp set is on sale for $8. $8. As part of their Wednesday Blitz deal. So I will link that below if you want to head over. There's a bunch of other things on sale too. Their Wednesday Blitz deals are always great deals. There's Christmas, there's dies, there's embellishment stamps, there's all kinds of stuff. So with that said, let's get into what we're going to be talking about today. And that is creating a dramatic background with either colored cardstock or creating your own. So here, I've picked out a couple of green distress inks that I'm going to be using to create kind of my dramatic background. And this was very heavily inspired by Shannon. I saw a card that she did for the Hero Arts blog hop, and I just totally loved her background. And I was like, yes, let's make green. So I have done these several other ways, or several other colors, I should say. It's always the same way. But I've done blue, and I think purple and maybe some pink, but never green, I don't think. And so hers was green and it was beautiful, and I thought it would pair so well with this deer stamp, which you can also use for winter, but I think fall is good too for deer. But anywho, so starting with a colored cardstock as your base, like we are doing here, does take a little bit of work out of it because you have a base color. So you saw me go over it completely with the crushed olive. The reason that I did that was to make my cardstock just a little bit more yellow. And that is a trick that you can use too. If you don't have like the perfect colored cardstock, you can add almost like a glaze of color over top with your ink blending to change the tone of the paper. But so here I did it to add just a smidge more yellow. And then I started working out around the edges. I guess I started working in, maybe is a better way to put it. So my next color was peeled paint, and I took that all the way almost to the center. And then after that, rustic wilderness. And then here's the trick to the dramatic background. You have to have black, or a very, very dark, rustic wilderness wasn't even dark enough, to add that drama around it. And that black is what's going to draw your eye to the center, which is typically where you're going to want to put your focal point with a card like this. You could use this technique to not do a center focal point, but then you would want to shape your distress inking or ink blending around whatever you were going to be putting down as your focal point. To create your own cardstock, if you don't have a colored base that you're working off of, and I do this all the time, you're just going to have to do it twice. Basically, I mean, you have to build up a solid enough card, like the color on the cardstock, in order for it to be perceived as a solid color. You know what I'm saying? Like, as if you had started with colored cardstock, you want that color to be really solid. It's not going to be the same across the board, obviously, because we're trying to create that kind of dramatic halo effect. But I did the same thing. This one is just a little bit brighter because it starts out as white. So my center for this one will be a little bit brighter than the other one. But I could have changed that if I would have just started with a little bit of a darker color. So if I had started with, like, say, a mowed lawn, and then went peeled paint, rustic wilderness, black soot, it probably would have been a little bit closer to the other background that I did using the colored cardstock, but I was okay with a little bit of brightness. I like the crushed olive. I think it's a good color for fall, but all of this is the same. As far as ink blending goes, you want to make sure that you're going in little circles. You're starting off of the page and bringing your little circles onto the paper in order to make sure you don't have like those circular blobs that you can sometimes get. And just be patient with yourself. This is sped up for me. But I am just going through and taking my time to make sure that I have really good saturation You guys know on other backgrounds, I like to do like spatters of water or spatters of shimmer. You could totally do that on these types of backgrounds, 100%. I also do that all the time. But for this particular one, I just wanted to keep it really clean. Like I said, when I saw Shannon's background, that's how hers was done. And she actually started with colored cardstock and then did a green and then a black. And that's all she added to it. And it was stunning. And I really liked how the fall colors kind of popped off of it. I'm not going to have the same, my background's going to have the same type of feel, but I'm not going to have the same like bright colors because I chose to use deer in this card, but I think they're super cute and really sweet, and I haven't used them. I think I used the trees in the set for a different card, but I did not use the deer, and I wanted to use them because I think they're super cute. So once I'm happy with the way that this looks, I'm going to set them aside to dry. And then here is what we've got going on. So the one on the left started as colored cardstock. The one on the right, we created our own colored cardstock, but you can see both have that dramatic halo and are beautiful backgrounds for whatever you would want to be using. Moving on to the stamping, since I am creating two cards, I wanted to use both backgrounds so you could see them side by side as finished pieces. Since I have never used this stamp set before, I never got to use those cute little, they're like 1 inch by 1 inch little square deers. And so I really wanted to use those. And then I stamped 2 other deer. There are dies that match this, but I don't own them. So we'll be doing some fussy cutting later on. Colors. Coloring. I like warmer browns. And in fact, I think it was Sherry who maybe asked me recently if I shaded my yellows with violet, if I had ever tried that, because the yellow combination that I work with is typically a Y02, a Y08, a YR24, and an E99. And you can shade any of the colors with their complementary colors. So for yellow, it would be violet. But I don't like the cool tone that it gives. I like warmer colors, which is funny since blue is my boyfriend and blue is clearly very cool. But if I'm going to be using like rich fall colors, I want them to be warm. And that is how I gravitated toward this particular color combination. As far as shading goes, just to reiterate what we have talked about previously, any point where 2 things meet will have shading any time an object is laying on top of another. So we're going to add a little bit of shading around his ears. Where his head is tucked down under his neck, there would be shading. Where his little leg, like almost like his knee kind of comes up over his belly, there will be shading. I added shading to his little tushy because he's sitting on it, so that would be connecting to the ground. And then on his back leg, the one that's hidden behind his body, will have almost no highlight, because it's tucked back under him, so it wouldn't be catching a lot of light. For his face, I opted to keep them pretty light, and so I did my lightest color, which was the E53, and then just added a little bit of shaving. Lord, I mean, he's hairy. We're not going to shave him. He's got to stay warm. It's fall. A little bit of shading with the E55. And then I'm going to color this other deer over here in the same color combination, as well as the deer below. I will be coloring all of them in the same way with the same color. When it comes to the deer below, I am going to speed that up a little bit just because you've already seen it on the 2 full deer, so I didn't really think we needed to spend a whole lot of time on that. Okay, story time. Do I even have a story for today? Honestly, I'm not sure. Let's think. Okay, so while we were out of town, I told you guys, we could not do this without the help of our parents. So my mom and dad watched the kids 2 days, and then Eric's parents watched the kids basically 2-ish days. We came home on Sunday and then got Caitlin back. Nathan was at his dad's. So they were very helpful to us, but my parents also let the dogs out for us. Because of Molly's surgery, we could have boarded Emma. We actually probably could have boarded both of them, but then Molly would never have left her cage, and that just makes me sad. So we, they were crated when nobody was here, but like my mom would come over during the day, and like especially the day after she had the kids, she came over and like napped on our couch, and the dogs got to be out while that was happening. So that way they just had somebody to spend some time with and get some love and hugs and pets, and they could stay in their own house. So that was extraordinarily generous of them to spend their time that way. Back to the card. I wanted to add just a little bit of pink, so I added them a little blushed cheek and then just a swoosh of pink in their ear, just to kind of, I don't know, I guess make it a little bit softer. So yeah, anyway, they were very generous in spending their time with the doggies, as well as our children, so that we could escape for the weekend. Molly is, because she still is recovering from her surgery, basically the first 2 months she's supposed to be pretty immobile. The last 2 months she's supposed to be pretty active to try to rebuild that muscle. She is getting around much better on it, but you have to take her out on a leash. She can't just go gallivanting throughout the yard. She has to be on a leash. And so normally I'm home during the day. She can stay out because she's supervised because I'm here. And then I just take her out, whatever, her couple of times throughout the day. So it rained a lot in the last couple of days. Very icky weather. Today is nice though. No complaints about today. Today is nice. But it had been raining. So I was like, it's kind of a pain in the butt to take her out on the leash, and I feel bad. And my mom was like, don't worry about it. It's no problem. So we left out the retractable leash, instead of her short leather leash, so that they wouldn't have to like tromp through the grass. This was my brilliant husband's idea. So that they wouldn't have to tromp through the grass. They could just stay on the deck and Molly could get out into the yard pretty far. Back to the card. So here you can choose to color these blocks, these background blocks, however you would like. You could even leave them white. I wanted to show you what it would look like with kind of like a daylight kind of look, so like a blue sky behind them. So I chose some lighter blues. I wasn't sure it was going to match my green. I am going to double check it. I did not love it, and so I switched to a darker blue, which honestly gave me more of like a nighttime scene, and I'm not sure I was prepared for that, but that's what I chose, and it is what it is. So you definitely do not have to do a 3-color blend here. That's what I chose to do, but I will show you on the next one what it looks like if you just fill it in with one solid color. And honestly, it's pretty similar. So I don't necessarily know that it's worth all of the work of blending these 3 colors to make it happen. But, that's what I did. And then they all had to be matchy-matchy. You know how we roll around here, all the matchy-matchies. So anywho, so that was good for them. They could take her out on the retractable leash and they wouldn't have to tromp through the wet grass. So day before, it had been raining all day, and there was finally a break in the weather. Now, I will have you know that my parents had no issues, by the way, and Peanut was super helpful, and most of the time he would take Molly out, so my parents didn't have to. And so I was taking her, and you have to remember we have that wheelchair ramp, right? So you go down the ramp, and then you're onto the bottom deck, and she's right next to the grass, and she just goes out, and you stand on that lower deck. It's really like a platform. Like, it's a wood platform. But anyway, so there was a break in the rain 2 days ago, and I was like, yes, I'm gonna take her out to go potty, while there's a break in the rain, because she doesn't even really like the rain. She's got a lot of anxiety like her mama. Back to the card. So this white little gel pen, I changed the little dots on their tushies to white instead of black. I also added a highlight to their little hooves, and I am going to add some stars. It almost even kind of looks like snow, in these blue sky boxes around these other deer. And I think that would be really cute for a winter card. That wasn't my game plan with this, but if you do that for a winter card, make sure you put some snow over their face so it looks like they're standing in the snow. And then I'm going to go through, and you guys know I like a bold black outline. I am going to outline them. So anyway, so I took Molly out while there was a break in the rain. We go down the ramp together. She's on her on her retractable leash. And as we get to the bottom of the ramp, I'm in flip-flops. I take one step off the ramp onto that deck and totally eat it. Just completely lose my footing. It slips out from underneath me. I come down on my left-hand side, on my knee, and on my hand. Fortunately, that's the only part of me that hit the deck. Literally, not figuratively, I hit the deck. And so, fortunately, it wasn't too bad. I do have one nice bruise really starting on the top of my knee. We'll come back to story time in a second. So here I am fussy cutting these images because I don't have the dies. There's something to me that I just really love about the look of fussy cutting without that white outline. But I understand that not everybody has the capabilities of doing that. If you choose to do fussy cutting, some tips for you: start with the most intricate parts first because they have the least amount of support. So like I started with his little deer legs first while I had the support of the rest of the paper. Make sure you hold your scissors straight and turn the paper with your non-dominant hand. Don't be afraid to cut off pieces so you're not getting the resistance of the scissors against the paper. That's a surefire way to get your paper to tear. And then just go slow and take your time. For the squares, I could have cut them out just with my scissors, but I wanted to make sure that they were straight and even, so I am using my paper trimmer. This particular paper trimmer, the one that I use, has a wire guide in it. So I can see exactly where it's going to cut. But when you're doing little teeny tiny pieces like this, you have to make sure that you hold that plastic guard down super firm, or your paper can move. The other option you have is to either tape it or glue it to the paper trimmer. I've done that before too. But these are just little cute little 1" by 1" deers, and I thought they were adorable. In order to make my fussy cutting look a little bit smoother, I am going to go in with a Memento Tuxedo black marker. This is a water-based marker. If you go in with an alcohol marker, it can bleed into your image, so you want to use a water-based one. You can either hold it in your hand like I do. Also, I got a new marker. See it there? I didn't just transform that frayed one. I realized I had a new one and then I got that one instead. But so you can just hold it in your hand. I like to face the image away from me so I don't accidentally slip and color like this big black mark on my coloring. But alternatively, if this doesn't work for you or you feel like it's a little too intricate, put it down on a piece of scrap paper and then just color around the edges while you hold it in place. That works too. But anyway, so yeah, I totally ate it on the deck, 110%. Came down on the knee, on the hand. Fortunately, thank God, I had Molly on the retractable leash, so she had enough of a lead that I didn't jerk her when I fell, because I would have felt so terrible on her poor little bum leg if I was like dragging her around the yard. But fortunately, that did not happen, and I am okay now. Let's talk about the card. So here I thought about, I wanted to put in some grasses, and so I do have the My Favorite Things grass stencil. This is fantastic, just like their cloud one, and so I thought, well, I'll put in some grasses with this, but then I didn't really love it. True facts, I just didn't. And so I'm going to do it with Copics instead. Once I hold my little guys in place, I'm going to go back in there with some yellow-green markers and just put in some grasses just underneath their feet to kind of ground them and have it make a little bit more sense. But anyway, so we have cameras. Yes, we do. We have cameras on the outside of our house. And we have cameras in the back. So as soon as it happened, like I have the app on my phone, but I have the alerts shut off. Eric has the alerts on. So I sent him a text message and I was like, totally just wiped out on the deck. You're gonna want to pull that video. And you know what was so unfortunate? Because I was like, surely we'll be able to watch this video and have a good laugh. But it only caught me getting up. It didn't catch my fall. It only caught the top of my head as I was picking myself up off the deck. So that was a little disappointing. But yeah, I'm super thankful it was me and not my parents, me and not Peanut. But yeah, you gotta watch them slippery wet decks because they'll take you out. Took me down. So for the sentiment here, I treated with my anti-static tool. I stamped in some clear embossing, and then I am using the white detail embossing powder. You want to make sure that you have either waited an appropriate amount of time for your ink to dry, like the ink blending that you've done, especially if you're using distress inks. They're made to stamp and emboss with, so they do stay wet for longer. I recommend doing a test run, just sprinkling your embossing powder over top of it first before you do any of your stamping that you would like to emboss, just to make sure you don't ruin it. And then I also did the same thing to create a little label for my other card on black. And they're both such cute little sentiments. There's some other options in there too, but I went with the to a dear sweet friend, and then the other one was you're the most fun to frolic with. I thought that was adorable. I did determine that I did not like the little squares on the full background. It was just too big. And so I trimmed it down, and you'll notice that I trimmed it down equally on all sides so that I could preserve that halo effect. And then I'm going to mount this on a white card base. And this is just gonna give the image, like make the image more of a focal point since it is a little bit smaller. I'm gonna use a ruler to aid me in lining it up along with my grid mat. This is just a paper pad that I have on my desk that I use. I'm going to line up my ruler, line up my cards so that they're both straight, and then I am putting foam adhesive on the back, and I did find it much easier to adhere them with tweezers so that I could hold the ruler with one hand to make sure that it didn't move, and place my square with the other hand so that they were lined up. As far as lining things up goes, little trick on that is make sure you start in the center. If you want your image to be centered, start lining up your things, whether it's lettering or images, in the center. And then that way you can adjust for spacing on the way out. So I used some more foam tape underneath my sentiment. And again, I'm going to place this down with my tweezers to make sure that I can get it super straight and they are centered underneath my little deer. I think these are adorable. They're so cute. I like the little, you guys, I like framed in things. I should do that more. But I thought they were really very sweet. So for these little fussy cut deer, I'm going to glue my tall deer, my standing deer in the background. And look how pretty that is with no white outline. I know. I know, it's so good. It's just so much better. But anywho, I do like coloring the white outline, and the die cutting is way easier and less time consuming. I can admit that. So then the little deer that's curled up, I added some foam to. I'm going to place him underneath the other deer so that they're kind of like, you know, snuggled up together. And then I needed to add some more grass just to balance it out. So I just went back in to give the sitting deer a little bit more of a line underneath it. I added some more grasses, and then I went back in with even a darker color, a YG99, and just added a couple little flicks of grasses for dimension. And the last thing I did to both the cards was add a little bit of shimmer. To the first card, I just added it to their ears and their tushes. And for the second card, I added it to the blue background. And then that's it. So one on the left is the colored cardstock. The one on the right is the colored cardstock we created. I think they're both super cute. I hope you found something to inspire you. And again, if you're interested in that Wednesday Blitz deal, I will link it below. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.